Well, hey, everybody, this is our third and final installment of our conversation on race between me and my friends Ariea and Rod. Hope you've enjoyed the first two and they've challenged you. If you haven't listened to those, please go back and listen to episode 1 and then 2, and then this is 3. Well, and you're touching on a little bit of the intersectionality piece. So you know, to define terms again, so intersectionality means the intersection of different minority or groups of oppressed people. So I would be way outside. I am white, I am heterosexual, and I am male. Yeah. So I am the oppressor. Yeah. Okay, that's me. Okay. Now, you two are both black, but you're also heterosexual and male. So you only score 1 point.
Yeah.
Okay, you get 1. Okay, but if you were black and gay, now you get 2 points.
Oof, man. Okay?
But if you were black, female, gay, and transgender, you would sweep the house right there.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So that, again, this is not disputable. So anybody who wants, that's literally what intersectionality is.
Exactly
what it
that
means.
is.
Okay.
If you don't know, go read it.
Yeah, go read
it's
it.
Out.
Right?
It's in print. It's not Scott. It's in print.
So the moral high ground is to be the biggest victim in the room.
Yep.
So and that gives you, culturally speaking, the biggest voice and the most power.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody else is forced to sit down and listen to you based on those attributes.
Yeah.
Even though whatever you may be talking about, you might not know what you're talking about.
Exactly.
Man,
okay.
we can give a good cultural reference to that with the Rachel Nichols, Maria Taylor deal. Like, look, I'm going to say something that might be unpopular with black people. What Rachel Nichols said wasn't wrong.
Give the story. So contextually, we're talking about ESPN during the NBA Finals. Yeah. Rachel Nichols has been the host of NBA Tonight and with the NBA Finals for a decade, maybe, a long time.
And her point that she was making to Rich Paul, LeBron James' agent, that somehow they recorded it, was like, "Hey, I know my company's track record here. They haven't been the best, like, with women and minorities. Like, hey, look at me. I'm a product of that. But, like, hey, essentially, just because she checks one more box than me, don't take away from me to try to remedy a problem that's been caused by you not promoting diversity, by you not doing right by people who are, female or black." And they went way the wrong way of, like, hey, you know what?
And then Maria Taylor left.
Yeah.
she went and got more money with another company, if I'm not mistaken. Which is interesting.
Yeah.
But the distinction there, is that you start chasing what people will refer to as the equality of outcome.
Yeah.
So as
equity.
opposed, which is equity. So when someone says equity, they may not know what they're talking about, but the people who do know what they're talking about mean equality of outcome, meaning we want everybody to end up in the same place.
Yeah.
We want everybody to get a ribbon. Everybody gets a trophy.
Yeah.
Okay. Versus equality of opportunity, which is where I would say, I want as many people as possible to have an equal opportunity to work their butts off and get to a position like Rachel Nichols did or Maria Taylor did, for that matter. But if you want me to just hand you this because of these things that have nothing to do with your competence, your performance, your abilities, your knowledge, that's where I'm out. Right? But we see this being pervasive. And here's another thing I'd love to hear y'all on is I can't think of anything more demeaning to communicate to a black person than to say, hey, you can't do this, so we're going to do it for you.
Yeah.
You're an oppressed person because of the color of your skin, and you have no hope to ever be anything other than that. And if we don't do something for you, you will always be that. You actually don't have the ability to improve your life in any way, shape, or form, whether you think you do or not.
Yeah.
So in fancy words, they just victimize us.
And it seems to me to be deeply racist.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Like because of the color of your skin, man. I'm sorry. Like unless we help you out, you can't do it.
Yeah,
that seems racist to me.
Yeah, I just feel like people are they're trying to hit the wrong target. I think a lot of people are trying to hit the target of diversity. Okay. So when you're trying to hit the target of diversity, it's almost inevitable that you're going to end up with tokenism and assimilation. But your target should be biblical equality. Because if you shoot for biblical equality, diversity is going to happen. Just look at God's creation.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I'm no smart guy. I'm not. I just like to think about these
things. You're very smart, Ariea.
Right. Well, okay, so this was actually one of the things I wanted to talk about as well. So in the church, it is very, 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 and it has been for a while, popular for diversity to be, if not the bullseye, but right next to the bullseye, like a major objective, chase diversity.
Yeah.
And on one extreme, I've seen people say in places like, well, I'll give you the example. So Colorado, like when I went out there in 2006, I looked around. I mean, the high school I graduated from at the time, Dunbar here in town, was roughly 30 to 40% black. I went out to Colorado and was like, where are all the black people? Like, there are no black people here. There's white people and there's Asians. Yeah. That's it. Like, where are they? So if you were going out there to plant a church and you said, man, I want a 50-50. I want my church to be 50% African-American, 50% white or whatever, I would go, well, the city doesn't look, Denver does not look that way. The city, Boulder definitely doesn't look that way. You know, so your church in some sense should reflect the community that you're in. That seems to make some sense to me. But also, that only seems to be an objective, this diversity objective, in either churches that set out to say we're going to be multi-ethnic from the jump, okay, or in white churches that don't want to be just a white church anymore.
Right.
I've not ever, and we've laughed and joked about this, but I don't know that anybody walks into Consolidated Baptist and goes, y'all need more white people. You know, how come you're not more diverse? You know, does that ever happen in the black community, in the black church? Is that a conversation that's happening, or is it only a conversation that's happening with people like I just articulated, either white churches or people that are trying to plant multi-ethnic churches from the jump? And is it even a target worth aiming at, like you're saying, Ariea?
I can't speak into that because I don't know. I've been I've been removed for some time. You know, I've gone on and you know and led my family to a place where I feel like we can continue to grow in God's grace and His Word. So it's hard for me to speak into that. I really don't know what's happening in black congregations. But from the time that I was there, to answer that question, no. Like, I don't remember those conversations happening.
And so I'm clear, you know, and tipping my hand here a little bit, like, I don't know that it should be.
No.
So when I go to pick a place, Uganda, you know, I go worship at churches in Uganda. I'm the only white American dude there. I'm with a team of people. We're the only white Americans there, or whatever. I go, man, this is great. Would I want to worship in that way every week? The answer is no. I wouldn't. I mean, it's a cultural expression unique to them. And I don't blame them for, like, I don't walk in there and go, man, well, you guys ought to do a few, you know, Rich Mullins songs around here. You know, why would I do that? You know,
but like, people hear something like that and they think, man, this guy has to have some racism in his heart. Well, no. This guy, like, we're all from different cultures. There's things about our culture that we gravitate to. Now, where we have to be careful with is when we start having implicit biases that affect how we relate to other people. Like, that's where you can get into trouble with. But, like, man, if you come to me and you're like, man, I'm a fan of country music. Like, I don't really get down with hip hop, which Scott does get down with hip hop. But I'm just saying, man.
For the record.
I'm just saying, man, there's certain things culturally that we have to accept. Like, hey, this might not necessarily be this guy's cup of tea, and that's okay. Like, you don't have to want to do everything it is that I do. Having said that, so there's some dangers to where when you focus on diversity, because when you focus on diversity, you're taking your focus off the cross. And if you focus on the cross, diversity is going to be a natural product of it.
It's a symptom of the gospel.
Yeah,
exactly.
And so, like, man, again, to quote another Weiss line from a sermon, if you see a need and you decide to go meet that need, like, you're not thinking, I see this white person over here, let me go meet their need because I look like them. You're saying, hey, this is a person over here that I see a need in. Let me go meet this need. Let me invite them in. Let me go show them about Jesus. And you know what? They may come to Southland and they might be feeling Southland. They might say, you know what? I'm glad you introduced me to Jesus, but culturally,
I'm more at home.
Yeah, I'm more at home. I would engage more if I'm here, and like that's okay to me.
It's okay.
Like people get uncomfortable about stuff like that, and it's like, hey, man, I'm cool with you with your preferences, just so long as we're keeping the main thing the main thing.
And this has been a disagreement between me and other, church leaders and things like. There are many church leaders who will tell you, if you want to see diversity, it has to be the main thing, And so, but then when you say, but no, I thought Jesus needs to be the main thing, they'll go, he is. But and it's like, wow, I get super nervous when there's a but at the end of that statement. Yeah. And so we had a young person interview a few years ago who literally asked me in the interview, said, hey, what are your goals around diversity? Like, how high of a priority is that for you? And I said, our highest priority is reaching lost and broken people with the awesome life of Jesus and the gospel. And I believe that diversity is one of the results of that. And if I ever switch the two, I won't get either. I won't get either one of those things, so I end up sacrificing both. But I'm fully confident as long as if we really keep the gospel in the center and we keep Jesus in the center over the course of time, this will work itself out. I mean, here's another thing I've tried to say is like, look, this church, 60-something years old, man, if you were to look at it organizationally and structurally, there was points in time where you go, man, racist structures in place. You are the first black elder we've ever had. It's been too long, and you shouldn't be the only one. So, but here's where we are. Here's where we were. What got us there? Here's the answer: Jesus, the gospel. Okay, it takes its time. It takes time to work itself out. But there are those who would say, "Well, burn down the very thing that actually got you to the place that you wanted to be. Like the reason you got here is because of the gospel. Yeah. But you want to turn the whole thing upside down."
Well, so like whenever I go to Scott's house for dinner, if Scott were to put, like when I get there, like, oh, I just got to pop this in the microwave here, we're going to eat in about 2 minutes, I'd be like, man, this thing is going to be very appetizing to me. Sometimes you got to put it in the oven, let it cook for a little while. Sometimes things take time. Now, as things are taking time, we're still pointing toward Jesus. We're still straining towards the goal to become more like him. But we're also in this age now where people, we got to get it right now. Yeah. If you don't become as diverse as we think you should be, like, let's burn it all down right now. Like, we can't deal with your timetable. And it's like, man, I'm watching some churches who are like striving for diversity, and they've let things like CRT, intersectionality, really start to creep in to the culture of their church. And it's like, man, are your sermons even about like pointing people to Jesus anymore? Like, it seems like every single day with some of these churches who have adapted this, we got to be so diversity-centric, that there's a whole lot less talking about Jesus and more virtue signal of like, hey, look at us. Look at how great we are. We got Hispanic people over here. We got black people over here. We're inviting black people by the droves. Like, look at us. And it's like, hey, man, how's about you lift up the name of Jesus, and Jesus will do all the drawing of people into your church. Like, man, he has to be enough. We can't get into this let me attach this to it. Let me attach this. Like, Jesus is the mark.
Mm-hmm. It would do your church no good to be diverse with all different types of ethnicity and no one saved.
Well,
you've lost your first love. I mean, lots of churches lose sight.
I'll go even a step even further on that. And man, both of you know how big I am into discipleship. Mm-hmm. Like, I believe that's the biggest problem that faces the church as a whole. And I think sometimes, especially when people get into the diversity deal, they think that God's goal in life is for us to be saved. And I'm going to say something controversial. That is not God's goal for your life. It isn't. Salvation is the most beautiful gift you can ever be given. But God's goal is actually about restoring us to the creation he intended us to be, mm-hmm. and for us to become as much like Jesus as possible. Mm-hmm. And in becoming like Jesus, we start to see, man, these people are poor and disenfranchised. I have to do something about this. Man, these kids are over here growing up in fatherless homes. I have to do something about this. Not, I have to do something about this. I should go give them money. But I have to do something about this. Let me write my local legislator and tell them they need to put this. No. The more we become like Jesus, the more we start to see, man, it is my responsibility to go meet this need right here. And then you start to see people of all different shapes and sizes get drawn into that. Like, look, Jesus is the most attractive dude to ever live. And the more we become like him, you'll see people start to flock in droves because they're like, man, I see an amazing light here. I see them with this inexplicable joy. And, man, people gravitate to it.
And Ariea is the second most attractive man ever.
Man,
why does this have to come back? I mean, we were rolling. We were doing good.
I know we were. It's called a breathable moment. That's what John Weiss calls them. Breathable moment.
Also, everybody breathe.
Also, I mean, I was trying to get to this here in the beginning in y'all's little opening salvo, but like one of the things that I want white people to stop doing is telling me that you don't see color.
It's the biggest lie.
Wait, what?
I'm colorblind.
I'm colorblind. I don't see color.
The goal is
that's
not
unfortunate.
To be, the goal is to not be blinded by color.
Yeah,
that's the goal.
That's a good way of saying it. I mean, in 2019, I preached a sermon on race. Ariea and I were joking about it the other day. I mean, you preach on hard and controversial things, and sometimes you take a deep breath and go, phew, don't have to preach about that one for a while. That's got a shelf life. And then 2020 hit, you know. But that was one of the things I said was like, why would I want to be colorblind any more than I would want to be actually colorblind?
Yeah.
Like, there's beauty in the distinctions. Why would I not want to know? Why would I not want to see that, appreciate it, and notice that? That's silliness to me.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely, man. So like that's one that I really wish people would just stop saying. Like, God created us different shapes, different sizes. Some of us more beautiful than others.
It's getting very uncomfortable.
The only thing you need to is to start talking proper. Like, and like, man, if you were to have like a British accent with that face,
oh man,
dude. What?
This is so
you
weird
don't like
right
this.
now. This is very weird.
Which makes you're feeding them by you gotta not respond or react or it'll keep coming. You know, when I was I grew up in this church, grew up in this town, and I sincerely don't say this to virtue signal or whatever. I've always had friends of different races, and I remember being a part of this church maybe in my junior year of high school. A friend of mine who's black asked another friend of mine who's white to homecoming at Dunbar. Well, this young lady's father happened to be a high-level leader here at this church. A few high-level leaders called him, and said, we heard that so-and-so is going to take your daughter to homecoming, and that ain't right. And to my friend, her dad's credit, he went, you're wrong, you ain't right. Shut your mouth, But word got to my friend. He found out. And me and another friend have been bringing him to church here. That kind of thing. And I remember where I was sitting when I put my arm around him while he was crying on the curb, going, you got to be kidding me, man. Not here. Like, I can't take a white girl to homecoming, you know? And I just remember how deeply that influenced me, how angry I was, how sad I was, how hurt I was. To give some perspective, that was roughly 1995.
Yeah.
96. Now, to some people listening, they maybe go, wow, you're old. Now, the rest of us, we go, that ain't that long ago.
Yeah.
You know? So that's, and I don't say that proudly, you know, that is where we're coming from. I mean, racism is a deeply embedded sin. It's been around Lexington and Kentucky for a long, long time. It was very present in this church, and that breaks my heart. Yeah. There's many sins that I could also talk about.
Man,
you know?
Absolutely.
So with that in mind, just like the gospel, just like Jesus is the cure for all those other sins we could spend just as long on podcasts talking about, it's the same for race. So let me maybe kind of land the plane here a little bit. We can start to circle the runway a little bit. 2020 hits, George Floyd, all the things that happened in response to that. All of a sudden, everybody started making comments and statements, and everybody's responding and reacting and all that kind of thing. How would you all like to see when cultural moments happen, and they will? You know, I mean, we're all old enough to go all the way back, you know, and during our lifetimes, and we can trace those kind of moments, whether it be Rodney King, the O.J. Simpson verdict was one of them. Like, I remember being at Dunbar, and we had the TVs in every room, and we telecast it, and then when the verdict came down, there were two distinct reactions to that verdict in my high school, and it was the first of two times that I ever saw racial division at my high school. You know, the second time was when a dude during Black History Month. I've told a couple of you, maybe I've told both of you this story. During Black History Month, we used to have a assembly in the gym, and we had a choir called the Harambe Choir that would perform. And as we were all leaving, this was my senior year, I think, and we had a pretty unified school. Like, we all did stuff together. Like, we had a really fun, especially my senior year. This dude walked in front of the Harambe Choir, this all-black choir, raised his hand and said, "White power." Yeah, and it set it off for I mean, cops had to be called. Like, they locked us down for a little while. But those were the only two times I really sensed that there was, you know, real significant, you know, even though the rest of us, you know, when he said it, you know. So all that to say, when these cultural moments happen, and they will, how would you like to see Christians respond in the moment, and churches respond in the moment? So
can I tell a little bit of a story? So I remember one time, with
that voice, absolutely. We'll all curl up, Barry White, and we'll listen.
The smooth sounds, the quiet storm.
This is a men's podcast, and a whole bunch of dudes just turned it off. Like, don't talk in my ear that way.
But so the first sort of real job I had out of high school, there was a guy who was my plant manager, and my first year of that job, it was like really rough working for him because of how he would approach me. And man, one day I had kind of had enough. I was like, "Hey man, you do realize that you don't have to talk to me the way that you talk to me when you need me to do something." He was like, "How am I talking to you?" I was like a bully. Like, you don't have to bully me. Like, I understand you're the boss. You can just simply tell me to do something, and I'll do it. And, like, he just kind of stood there for a minute. It just was, like, taken aback. So I went about my job that day, and over, like, the next couple weeks, he just started coming, sitting in the break room, just talking to me. And he and I started developing a relationship where we started joking with one another. We started, like, working out at the gym. And, you know, it started leading to us having some discussions. And one day, I was like, "Hey, man, you do realize you racist, right?" He was like, "What are you talking about, man? I'm not racist." I go, "That." He goes, "I like you." I go, "That's strike one." He was like, "I mean, Rod, I approve of you." And at the time, Rachel was my girlfriend. He's like, "I approve of you and Rachel." I'm like, "That's strike two." I go, "Let me tell you how I'm going to get strike three." I go, "How many phone numbers you got in your phone?" He's like, 200. I go, how many of them's black people? He goes, 6. I go, you are filthy racist. And he's like, why? Because I only got 6? I go, no, because without hesitation, you knew it was 6. I'm like, dude, it's like when you got to 5, you were like, I'm almost at 3% capacity. One more, and that's it. Oh, Rod. I'm like,
you got to give credit. Wasn't it Chris Rock? Wasn't that a Chris Rock joke?
Yeah. And so he and I, we would laugh. Yeah. We would kind of joke about these things. And he and I developed a relationship over like 5 years where it became like father-son. And I remember talking to him one day. We were at the gym. He was like, man, I just want you to know, man, like, I love you. I was like, really? I was like, man, I love you too. I go, but hey, with this love, we should be able to sort of say anything we feel like to one another and not get mad. He was like, absolutely. I go, I'm going to ask you a question, man. I promise you I won't get mad. Can you promise me you won't get mad beforehand? He's like, absolutely. I go, man, if you could send all the black people back to Africa, would you? He was like, I'd send some back. I go, really? I was like, what would make you say you would send some back? He was like, well, I'd send the ones back who aren't taking care of their kids, who, you know, they walk around, they got their pants hanging around their behind. I was like, okay, you do realize white people do the same thing, right? He was like, well, I'd send them somewhere also. I was like, here's the deal, though. It's an all or nothing proposition. It's like, you either send all of us back or none of us back. What do you choose? And he looks at me and goes, honestly, before I met you, he goes, I would have said send every one of you back. But because I know you and sending every one of the black people back would mean I'd have to send you back, he goes, I deal with all of them just so I can keep you here. And then he looks at me, he goes, hey, man, I'm not where I need to be yet. He's like, I'm not. He's like, man, I have deep-rooted things in my heart. And he started spilling out all these experiences that he had with black people that shaped his view of things. And he just started walking me through like, man, I have this trauma through this experience. Man, it's not right, but I'm just giving you some perspective of where my heart is. Man, you've helped me a lot, helped me get a lot better. I say all that to say when we have a lot of these cultural things happen, people are scared of the own sort of racism that might be revealed in their heart, whether you're white or black, to where they don't want to have hard conversations and go, hey, at the end of this, we can still acknowledge that there's a problem that needs to be fixed, but we have to work through some deep-rooted, deep-seated issues that exist in our hearts. But you have people, man, who they're afraid to step out there on that landmine. I would be called some derogatory names for not walking over and punching the dude right in the face for saying he would. But it's like, hey, man.
Well, the story you just told is not politically correct. You know, I mean, there's going to be some people holding their breath when they hear you tell this story, but that's probably true of our entire conversation we've had today. Right. You know, and so I think that goes back to one of the points that we've been making is that the three of us can sit here and our blood pressure doesn't go up. Like my pulse rate hasn't changed. I'm not worried, and we're allowing people to listen in and experience in some measure what we have, which this conversation we're having is probably making some people very uncomfortable on all sides of this equation right now.
Good.
You know, but we're fine. And that's what I think everybody needs to hear as well. Like, that's actually possible. Yeah. And you know, just like I'm going to ask, like, if you've been listening to this podcast and one of us has said something that you don't like or you don't like, okay, that's totally fine. I'm sure we could play this back and go, I would have said that better, would have said that differently, or I wouldn't have said that, or whatever that may be. That's the nature of relationship, and that's the nature of conversation. So, so if you want it to always be buttoned up and perfect, okay, but what you're going to sacrifice is relationship. You know, so I could have come in here, you know, the reason I brought this was because it had that scripture on there and it had one definition of critical race theory I wanted to make sure I said right. You know, we could have scripted this whole conversation and everybody would have seen through it and we would have said everything we wanted to say exactly the way we wanted to say it, and very few people would have been helped.
Look, Scott and Ariea might watch this back and be like, man.
Well, Aria's going to watch it back to make sure everything matched the way it was supposed to.
Yeah,
see, I mean, there it is. There's the wristwatch. Yeah. You can't flip me off. It's a Christian. You're an elder, and this is a Christian podcast for our church, sir.
I thought we was talking about race.
But look, man, and I probably shouldn't say this way because Gary Black just posted something on Facebook about people saying, I am the way that I am. Look, man, I am the way that I am.
Yeah.
Like, I'm rooted in my relationship with Christ. Like, my identity lies in him. Hey, I'm also afflicted by sin. Mm-hmm. So I might say something that makes people uncomfortable. Like, hey, I'm a sinful human being who needs God's grace just as much as the next person does. Like, I say what I say, and man, if people want to talk about it, hey, we can talk about it all day long, have a discussion, get to know me, get to know my background, get to know why I feel the way that I feel. But, if you watch like a podcast and you want to condemn somebody because they said a couple things you don't like, man, check your own heart here. Like,
I don't think you have that problem, Rod. I think a lot of people would be like, I got to meet that guy. Like, I want to have more conversations with that guy.
I don't know about that, man.
I'm saying, man. But I would like, to go back to the question. I would love for Christians, because you said, how would you like Christians? I would love for Christians to stop in the moment and wait to hear everything. I taught a class my first year at the high school, and we was teaching things like employability skills and just trying to build character in young people. And one of the equations we had was E plus R equals O. And the E is event plus response equals outcome. But that R is not reactive, it's response. Because when you respond versus react, then that means you spent time thinking about waiting for all facts to come out. And pray through these things and see what God has to say about these situations, because nothing's new under the sun. Like the Bible, like I hate quoting Bible all the time. No, I don't. I really love quoting Bible because Bible really does give you the perspective that you're supposed to have.
Yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun. Whatever we're facing, there's already been a prescription for it. So my wish for Christians, when something like this does happen, man, take some time with the information. Don't get caught up in what's happening in the media. Don't get caught in a narrative pusher, because you got that all day long. You got people who can create a narrative, and they can find all kinds of clips to back up what they're saying. That's the art of media.
Right.
Like, they can create any type of story they want to create, and at the same time defame you in the process.
Yeah.
So be diligent in what's happening. Research. Listen. If you want to listen. Listen to everything. Be prayerful, and then respond.
And can I add to that?
Go ahead.
Make sure you have a good network of Christian people that you can have hard conversations with.
Man, go to people, man. Bounce those things off of people. I got some solid dudes in my circle. That I can go to. And one of the guys is on staff here, and we built a wonderful relationship, because that's what we've been talking about this whole time, is relationships, was Eric Snyder. Man, him and I, we have these conversations all the time, and, dude's got sound perspective, and, man, he's helped me see things differently all the time. And we can come together and we can have these conversations, and we joke, and we're lighthearted as well, but I know where his heart is at.
Right.
I know who he is in. So therefore, when he comes at me with something I may not agree with, which is rarely, because, I truly value his friendship, but, man, I could say something back, and nothing's taking offense. Nobody's taking offense to the situation. So, I mean, when things like this happen, Christians, we are called to be different, set apart. Let's be that. Let's respond and not be overreactionary.
Yeah, everybody's afraid to talk about this, and all that does is drive us further apart, and it puts us in these echo chambers, right? So if we can't sit down and have conversations that are hard and ask things in a clumsy way and be corrected and amended along the way or whatever, well, then we're not going to get better. We're just going to
and not to steal this from him, because I don't want you to tell it, but my man broke us down one day in one of our studies about fear. What was it that one of your mentors told you about fear?
Oh, FEAR, false evidence appearing real. And
that's
like
good stuff.
Man, people will get wrapped up. That's a Charlie Martin-ism right there. But people will get wrapped up in like just fearfulness of putting on this facade of like, man, I got to say everything correctly. I don't want to offend people. Man, I actually enjoy offending people. Like
he's wearing a shirt, offensive.
Like, hey, man, if I don't spark something in you that might challenge you, like, man, my wife challenges me all the time on my thinking about stuff. Like, man, I remember one time, like, presenting to her a lesson that I was getting ready to teach in PE that, like, I taught it. Everybody thought it was great. She was like, you want me to really tell you about it? She's like, you could have done this better, this. And like, I was offended.
Yeah.
But like when I stepped back from it, it's like, man, she's right.
Yeah.
Like, it's about me giving the best that I can possibly give here. Like, you have to be willing for people to challenge you. And like when you're offended by something, go, hey, what's this rooted in? Because that's where like the heart change can actually come in at. But like, man, if I'm around people who are puffing me up and being all fluffy all the time, like, yeah, get out of here. Like, dude, we go at it, man.
Yeah.
Like, we have some hardcore, like, conversations. Like, man, there at surface level about these friendships here. There are things that we're able to talk about and hold each other accountable to that's like, hey, man, look, this is about us becoming the best version of ourselves. You might be offended, but, hey, dude, you got to do this better.
Wounds from a friend can be trusted. It's an enemy multiplies kisses.
Oh, yes.
Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Man,
Proverbs 27.
Yeah. Real talk.
Well, fellas, appreciate you both very much.
Appreciate you, man.
Yeah. So this wraps up Locker Room. I don't know how many episodes this ended up becoming because we recorded it all in one conversation. So I'm sure we'll figure that out on the back end. So however many you listened to, thank you for joining us. And then please share this with other men in your life or just people in general that you think would be helped by it. If you want to give us a rating on iTunes or however you listen to your podcast these days, that's great as well. And we'll catch you next time on Locker Room.